asking why did I put a LS1 to my E34 BMW. It's kind of a tough answer, you know. I think part of the issue is that I like the power. I like Corvettes, but I don't want a Corvette, but I want the power and the sound of a Corvette. You know, the BMW M60 3-liter V8 is a great motor, but doesn't have a lot of torque, doesn't have a whole lot of power. The LS1 has a lot more power compared to the 3-liter V8. The 3-liter V8, surprisingly, it wasn't very fuel efficient. I think the LS1 has better fuel economy, if that's something that you're interested in. The other thing was the fact that the original transmission on this car went out. And looking at replacing it, I figured I'd been looking at doing power adders to the 3-liter V8, and it just wasn't cost effective. Didn't make sense. I would not have 400 horsepower even with a super modified M60 3-liter. So it was just the best choice. So went ahead and did it. I don't regret it. It was a lot of work. I think almost anyone could do it if they plan properly, if they're methodical in how they do it. It's probably the most challenging part, like everybody's always asking, what's the most challenging part? The mechanical stuff was easy. I mean, you put parts together and, you know, that's it. The hard part, electrical parts, the electronics and the electrical connections, because there's so much room for issues. You know, if you have a bad connection, how do you track that down once you did it? So you got to be very methodical. You have to take your time. You have to make sure that each connection you make, you test it before you move on. Testing is important. You'll become friends with your multimeter. That's a really important thing. The other thing is, you know, I looked around at what other people were doing. Like, I modified the cross member on the subframe to fit the oil pan for the LS1. I had to go from a front sump to a rear sump to make it work, because it wouldn't fit. But I had to notch the subframe and make it happen. So, and I got that from the S13 guys. You know, they're doing these swaps with the LS1s into their cars, and they're having to modify the subframe they have. So I looked around the internet, saw what people are doing, different solutions, and kind of incorporated all those things into what I did with my car. And the results are pretty good. I still think it needs more power. I'm looking forward to probably doing a turbo system for it in the next couple of years. Yeah, you know, you always say what you want your power number to be. It's probably high threes. It's 400 horsepower. You know, 500 horsepower would be great to the wheels. It's great until you have it, and then you get used to it, and then you got to move on and do something else. What else? What other things would I do differently? I think the other things I'd probably do differently is maybe not focus so much on getting an LS1. So I did this a few years ago, so about 4 years ago. LS1s were pretty popular. I think with all the different LS-based architecture now, I wouldn't focus on a 5.7 liter all aluminum block. Even though this motor is lighter than the M60 that came out of it, I think I would probably, I wouldn't have any problem going to iron block. I'm probably going to do iron block when I do the boosted engine for durability and strength and, you know, accessibility. I wouldn't even worry about it being a 5.3 liter, you know, and you know, I wouldn't have to hunt down a 6 liter. If I find one, great. 5.3 would be fine. So it's those type of things that I wouldn't worry about. The other thing I did, I tried to do this on a shoestring budget. which still came out to be quite a bit more money than I expected. I do have a spreadsheet with all the costs that I spent on it, and it's, you know, it got up there pretty good because, you know, when you think about it, even when you buy fluids for the car, you know, that'll add up to a few $100 right there. You know, transmission fluid, oil, coolant lines, and things like that. That's a couple $100. So when you start looking at little small things that kind of incrementally increase your expenses, it's surprising how much more the cost of the project is than what you set it out to be. But it's a fun car. Got a modified suspension, got you know, some Bilstein sport struts on it. It has you know, lowered springs, KW lowered spring. Is it KW? That's not KW. I can't remember what lower springs there are now. Anyway, I'll find out and I'll put it in the notes below on the suspension setup. But it handles well. It handles like a sports car. I can get my kids to school in it. I use it as a daily driver for the most part. That's what it was built for, and that's one of the reasons why I didn't push the performance envelope too far, because I wanted something that was going to be dependable. I've had race cars in the past where I wake up in the morning and it won't start for some reason, then I got to go and rejet the Weber side draft carburetors in order to get to work. I didn't want anything like that. I wanted to be able to get up, turn the ignition, and be able to go. So you know, that was the goal. The goal was a daily driver with close to 400 horsepower, dependable, and I get my kids around the school and have some fun, take it up to the mountain roads. Whether when I lived in Washington State, now that I live in Georgia, I can do the same thing. There's mountains here too, so it's not, of course, not like the Cascades, but you know, they're nice. It's a fun time. So that's kind of the basis of this car. I just want to give a little video on, you know, why I did it, because people keep asking why. They ask how much does it cost. I would say you could probably budget probably from $6,000 to $12,000, depending on how much work you do yourself. All my fabrication I did myself, except for the AC hoses. I had those done when I lived in Seattle at Nibar. They built the lines for me. So, and I'll just think about that. It's like, it's one thing to have the idea of doing a swap. It's another thing to actually consider the total cost, not just, you know, hey, I can buy an engine for $3,500, or even now you can go to junkyard and pull one for $500 or less. But you got all the little incremental things that's going to add up. And I have gone through a drive shaft, and I have gone through a transmission, so you got to think about those things also. So like and subscribe. I'm going to do more stuff about the car. I got other projects I'll put online, and hope you guys enjoy it. Thank you.